What a privilege it is for me today to be in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, with Bob and Barbara Safford. I am so excited to be here. First of all, because they have their inner circle right here to listen to this Maximum Impact Club lesson with Primerica, just the cream of the cream. And to be in Bob's inner circle, you've got to be something, because this guy is almost like the father of Primerica, and he's been right at the top for many, many years. And in fact, we were having lunch today, and this is kind of fun. He told me that he originally hired Art Williams. And I thought anybody that hires the guy who really starts the company is doing pretty good. I salute him and say, you're the man. You're the man. And it's a joy to be with the inner circle people that are really adding value and making a difference. We even have a couple of legends in here with Primerica Financial Services that are just incredible. I remember a year ago, I was in Atlanta at the Atlanta Civic Center on a Sunday morning doing a service for the Primerica people. You were in a major convention, maybe your national convention, and Virginia Carter was on stage speaking. Now, the people in Primerica Financial Services know who Virginia is, but many of you, of course, getting this tape don't know. So you got to know this lady. I don't know if I'm allowed to give her age, but let me just tell you that she said she is 79 and celebrating her third 79th anniversary birthday. So I got a sneaking suspicion the lady has passed 80. But you've never met anybody like this lady. I mean, this woman is full of enthusiasm and excitement and joy. And I was cracking up because Bob Safford told me that she just went to her group and laid out their 15-year plan. And she's in her young 80s, and she's just launching to the future. And I thought, my goodness, I know people that are half your age, Virginia, that don't have half of your energy or your excitement and enthusiasm. And again, I thought to myself, isn't it true that people that add value to other people are people that love life and love people? And when you love both, you just become successful. Bob, your home here is incredible. I think Bob said in the 1760s, George Washington slept here, had dinner here. General Howe of the British slept here and had dinner here. Not on the same night, of course. Not during the Revolutionary War. No, no, no. And then he told me also James Audubon was married in this home. So, I mean, it's kind of like at last my wife Margaret and I got to be at the place. I mean, there's the White House and there's this house, okay? And it's a joy to be with you, and it's a joy to share this lesson with you. The lesson is going to be helpful not only to you that are in the room, but to the thousands of Maximum Impact Club members we have, because I'm going to talk to you about going from good to great. And let me just take a little survey here. How many of you here in the audience would like to go from good to great? And it's 100%, okay? In fact, now that I think about it, if you wouldn't have raised your hand, you wouldn't be in Bob Safford's inner circle, because he only goes for eagles and people that are on their way up to the top. Let me tell you where the seed that kind of inspired the lesson came from. We have an organization under the Enjoy group that I have the privilege of founding called Enjoy Stewardship Services. This is an organization that helps churches raise money for building programs and debt retirements. Last year, we raised $650 million for churches, and we're only 2 years away from raising $1 billion a year for churches all over America, helping them with building programs. So it's a wonderful adding value type of an organization. I was in South Bend, Indiana, at my friend Mark Beeson's church, and we are in our second time helping them raise millions of dollars. This is a church that started with basically very few people and now runs 3,500. And so we were having a night with his 600 or 700 leaders of asking for financial commitment. And Mark Beeson said something that was incredible. He stood up and probably for 15 minutes, he talked to his congregation, and he said, in the life of every organization, now, of course, he's talking to his church people. It could be Primerica Financial Services. It could be Maximum Impact Club member. It could be whatever organization you belong to. But here's what Mark said. He said, in the life of every organization, there is a time when they are called to step up to a whole new level. And he said the great organizations are the ones that when they are called to step up, answer that call and step up. In fact, he said what separates the great organizations from the good organizations is the great organizations always step up and the good organizations always back up. And when he said that, it really began to trigger some things within me. And then he began to illustrate it wonderfully that day. He talked about the fact that in athletics, in those important ball games, is the greater team that steps up when the game is on the line, or the great player that steps up. And he said it's true of a congregation, it's true of an organization. He had a great band that night, and he said it's true of a band. He said usually they have a signature song, and about the peak of the evening, the band just steps up to a whole new level. And he said maybe even feature every band member. And that night he illustrated by having every one of his band members play their best stuff, and the crowd was going wild. But he just talked about the fact that to go from good to great, you have to step up to a whole new level. Now, in your notes, the beginning statement that's going to be foundational for what I want to share with you is this statement. The difference between good and great is the difference that makes the biggest difference. Let me explain. There are step-up levels throughout a person's life and an organization's life. For example, you could step up from poor to average. In fact, many of us in this room have been poor perhaps at something, worked hard, and pretty soon we went from poor to average. That's a step up. You can step up from average to good. And that's another clear, distinct rise in what you're accomplishing. And then there's the step up from good to great. Now, here's what I want you to understand. The step up from good to great is the greatest step up you'll make, because that's the one that makes the biggest difference. Now, you can take that in every realm that you want to. You can take that in the area of relationships, friendships. We have average friends. We have some good friends. But we have a few great friends. Now, they're just a select few. But that great friend relationship is more important to you than all of the good friend and average friend relationships put together. It's the step that makes the difference. You can take that in the financial world. There are some people that make an average amount of money. There are some people that make a good amount of money. And then there are a few people that make a great amount of money. And it's the great amount of money that all of a sudden allows you to have options in your life that you just don't have under good, or you just don't have under average. Now, every level is fine, but the step up from good to great is a bigger step up than any other. And I think maybe that was brought home to me when about a year and a half ago, Margaret and I and a couple other people, we went to see the All-Star game when it was in Atlanta. And at the All-Star game that night, they honored the 100 greatest baseball players. And when they honored these 100 great baseball players, this is awesome. When they honored them, I began to look at these people, Ted Williams, and just all these great baseball players. I thought to myself, everybody in the stadium knows about what they did and who they were and what position they played and the significance, because these were the cream of the cream. These were the great baseball players. Now, what's interesting of the 100 players, and I mentioned Ted Williams a moment ago, of the 100 players, when Ted Williams was announced to that crowd, there was just a little bit longer, sustained, louder cheer. And I thought, my goodness, wouldn't it be something to be one of the 100 greatest living baseball players, but then have the crowd realize you are just maybe a little bit above all the rest of them as far as your giftedness and ability and dedication to the baseball game. You see, the step from good to great is a very significant step, but it's the one that makes the biggest difference. Note in your outline, nothing is changed in an average performance. The reason nothing has changed in an average performance is because it's average, and average happens every day. Little is changed in a good performance. Now, it's a fact that good performances change some things, but not much. But much is changed in a great performance. And we're going to talk in this lesson about how to go from good to great. Now, everything I've said in the introduction, along with an article I read out of the Harvard Business Review, and I have it in here because I want to make sure that I gave credit to the resource. Level 5 Leadership, the Triumph of Humility and Fierce Resolve. And there's going to be a book come out by Jim Collins that deals with some of this that I'm going to share with you today. Jim Collins is the guy that wrote about 4 years ago the wonderful book, Built to Last. I don't know if you read it or not, but it's a wonderful book. Well, Jim Collins, out of the Harvard Business Review, talked about level 5 leadership. And I think for an introduction, you see right in your notes, the paragraph, what catapults a company from merely good to truly great. A 5-year research project searched for the answer to that question, and its discoveries ought to change the way that we think about leadership. The most powerfully transformative executives possess a paradoxical mixture of personal humility and professional will. They are timid and ferocious, shy and fearless. They are rare and unstoppable. And in your notes, level 5 leaders are a study in what I would call duality. They are modest and willful at the very same time. Now, the Harvard Business Review talked about level 5 leadership. And I'm going to talk to you about what a level 5 leader is and what a level 5 leader looks like. And then I'm going to talk to you about other qualities that you need to have within yourself to take yourself or your organization or your business from good to great. But you'll see on your notes the level 5 hierarchy. And this is, again, out of the Harvard Business Review. This is not mine, but it reminded me very much when I read this. I did something about 15 years ago called the 5 levels of influence. Basically, I talk about 5 levels within every organization that you can be on as a leader, and the higher the level, obviously, the greater your influence. When I read the level 5 hierarchy, I thought, oh my goodness, this is getting real close to some of the stuff that I've taught for probably 15 years. But let me kind of set it up because it's very foundational for what I want to accomplish with you today. In your notes, the level 5 leader sits on top of the hierarchy of capabilities and is, according to our research, a necessary requirement for transforming an organization from good to great. But what lies beneath? 4 other layers, each one appropriate in its own right, but none with the power of level 5 individuals do not need to proceed sequentially through each level of the hierarchy to reach the top. But to be a full-fledged level 5 requires the capabilities of all the lower levels plus the special characteristic of a level 5 leader. Basically, they're saying if you're going to be a level 5 leader, you have to have gone through at one time or another the other 4 levels. Level number 1, the lowest level, let's start there for just a moment, and we'll kind of work our way up. Level number 1 is what they called highly capable individual. This is the person that was just a very highly capable individual. They make productive contributions through their talent, knowledge, skills, and good work habits. They're just a good, capable individual. Level number 2 is a contributing team member. Now, they are already a highly capable individual, but now they contribute to the achievements of the group objectives, works effectively with others in a group setting. So now they are not only highly competent, but they are a contributing team member. Level number 3 is the competent manager. This is the person who can organize people and resources toward an effective and efficient pursuit of predetermined objectives. So they have the ability to manage people and manage a process of achieving plans and goals. Level number 4 is the effective leader. This is the person that catalyzes commitment to and vigorous pursuit of a clear and compelling vision, stimulates a group of high-performance standards. Okay, this person on level 4 has become a very good leader. Now, level 5 is what they call the level 5 executive. This person builds enduring greatness. And I think the key word in here is enduring. Builds enduring greatness through a paradoxical combination of personal humility plus professional will. Let me give you a classic example of a level 5 leader. And I think this one I give you, we can all get our hands around it, okay? Abraham Lincoln is a classic example of a level 5 leader. We all know about his life. It's not in your notes. Let me read this to you. He never let his ego get in the way of his ambition to create an enduring great nation. Author Henry Adams called him a quiet, peaceful, shy figure. But those who thought Lincoln's understated manner signaled weakness in the man found themselves terribly mistaken. Through the scale of 250,000 Confederate and 360,000 Union lives, including Lincoln's own. In other words, when you would look at Abraham Lincoln, his kind of shy, peaceful nature would almost cause you many times to underestimate him. But deep inside this humble man was a steel resolve to get accomplished the mission and the dream and the vision that he thought was necessary. And that's kind of a picture of level 5 leaders. Let me give you some characteristics of level 5 leaders. In fact, I want to give you 3 of them in your notes, okay? Number 1, and I love this characteristic. They talked about the team and the company more than themselves. They talked about the team and they talked about the company more than themselves. Really, here's what happens. A level 5 leader is so excited about the team they're developing that they kind of shy away from even their own personal individual accomplishments, and they always want to point to their team and talk about what the team is accomplishing. I was just in Indianapolis, Indiana, a couple of weeks ago, speaking to about 2,000 leaders. And we had a question and answer time in the afternoon. And one of the questions that was directed to me was, John, what do you see as being the next major change in leadership? And I very quickly shared with that person, the next major change in leadership, without any question, is that we're going from individual leadership to team leadership. It's already happening, and it will happen at a rapid pace in the next 2 to 3 years. In other words, what I'm saying is, instead of one person being just the leader and everybody else kind of getting in behind and following, we're beginning to understand that many different leaders have many different gifts, and if we come together as a team, we can accomplish a lot more than we can as an individual. So team leadership is beginning to be big. Now, interesting enough, when they interviewed these level 5 leaders, what the level 5 leaders wanted to talk about was not what they had individually accomplished. What they wanted to talk about was what the team was accomplishing. And they wanted to lift up the team and say, but look what the team is doing. I had the same feeling a couple of weeks ago. We had a golf tournament for my nonprofit ministry, Equip, at Sawgrass in Jacksonville, Florida. And boy, we had a fabulous turnout and an incredible golf tournament. And the night after the first day of playing golf, we had a wonderful banquet for, I don't know, probably we had 140 golfers, something like that there. Had a full field. And John Hall, who is the president of our nonprofit ministry, Equip, sat down with about 5 of our Equip team players, one who represents our international leadership ministry and one who represents the urban leadership and one who represents the academic, and did an interview of our team. Not everybody on the team, but our 4 or 5 top players. And I sat there in the banquet hall with all the rest of them, just listening to these people talk about what they're accomplishing through their leadership. And I was so proud of my team. I mean, I'm just sitting there and I'm not doing anything. In fact, I'm sitting at the table. I haven't spoken one word. And the people are just mesmerized by what Equip is doing in the area of leadership, especially internationally, academically, and also in the urban community. And you can just see that these 5 people up front have them in the palm of their hand. And I had this just overwhelming, prideful feeling. I hope it's not wrong, but I mean, I wanted to stand up right in the middle and say, that's my team. That's my team. These are the players that are hitting home runs for me all the time. Now, that's what I think a level 5 leader is. I think a level 5 leader comes to the place where I know I came a couple of years ago, where team accomplishments became more important to me than individual accomplishments. I remember I came to a place in my life where I received more joy and reward out of the success of others than out of my personal success. That was a huge change for me. Because the moment that I received my greatest joy and motivation from other people succeeding, it totally made me committed to helping other people succeed instead of myself. A book called The 17 Indisputable Laws of Teamwork. And a book called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. By the way, I'm just curious in the room. Have you read the book 21 Irrefutable? Oh, my God. Okay, good. Okay, that's very good. You are truly great leaders. Anyway, let's go on. Just as the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership talk about 21 laws that you just have to learn and obey to be a great leader, these 17 Indisputable Laws of Teamwork are the 17 laws that you have to understand and obey to put together a great team. And here's what I wrote on the dedication page of the 17 Indisputable Laws of Teamwork. I dedicated it to my whole team. And I said to them, you make me better than I am. You multiply my value to others. You enable me to do what I do best. You give me more time. You represent me where I cannot go. You provide community for my enjoyment. You fulfill the desires of my heart. I can never thank you enough. That's what a good team will do for you. And the level 5 leaders, they're constantly thinking and talking teamwork. The second characteristic of a level 5 leader is they insisted on continual high standards. In other words, they said, we're going to have high standards and expect people to come up to our standards. We're not going to become average in our commitment. We're not going to become average in our expectations. And we're not going to accept average from people. We have high standards. Now, out of the Harvard Business Review, it's not in your notes, let me read you a classic example of a level 5 leader in this high standards I'm talking about. When George Kane became CEO of Abbott Laboratories, it was a drowsy, family-controlled business sitting at the bottom quartile of the pharmaceutical industry, living off its cash cow, and it was a certain kind of a product. Kane was a typical level 5 leader in his lack of pretense. He didn't have the kind of inspiring personality that would galvanize the company, but he had something much more powerful: inspired high standards. He could not stand mediocrity in any form and was utterly intolerant of anyone who would accept the idea that good is good enough. And for the next 14 years, he relentlessly imposed his will for greatness and high standards on Abbott Labs. Among Kane's first task was to destroy one of the root causes of Abbott's middling performance. That was nepotism. By systematically rebuilding both the board and the executive team with the best people he could find, Kane made his statement: family ties no longer mattered. If you couldn't become the best executive in the industry within your span of responsibility, you would lose your paycheck. Such near-ruthless rebuilding might be expected from an outsider brought in to turn a company around, but Kane was an 18-year-old insider and part of the family. In fact, he was the son of the previous president. Holiday gatherings were probably tense for a few years in Kane's clan. Sorry, he would say, I had to fire you. Want another slice of turkey? But in the end, family members were pleased with the performance of their stock. Now, classic example of a level 5 leader who just said, here are the standards. Family members or not, you have to meet these standards. Level 5 leaders expect people to rise to their highest level. In your notes, when you raise your standards, two things are going to happen. Winners stretch to the challenge, and whiners shrink from the challenge. The quickest way to separate the wheat from the chaff, biblical term, the quickest way to separate winners from whiners is set high standards. I promise you, winners will stretch to them every time, and winners will give you 27 reasons why they can't, shouldn't, and didn't. And they'll have excuses all the rest of their life. What's wonderful about leadership is you get to choose who you lose. Now follow me. The question is not, will you lose people in your organization? Every one of you in this room knows what it's like to lose people. Isn't that true? Huh? Come on now. Don't we lose people? Some of you, it's a spiritual gift. Okay, but let's go on. Huh? We all lose people. I lose people. You lose people. Huh? Okay. Don't we all lose people? The question is never, are you going to lose people? The question is, who will you lose? What's wonderful about leadership is you get to choose who you lose. Let me explain to this. If you set high standards, you keep your winners and you lose your whiners. If you have no commitment in your organization and basically will accept anybody and anything that anybody does, then you'll keep your whiners and you'll lose your winners who really want to go out and do something successful in life. Is that not true? Many times I'll run into somebody and they'll say, well, we don't really want to have these kind of commitments because we're going to lose people. And I always look at it and say, that's what leaders try to do. In fact, look at it this way. Leaders are always trying to lose people. Leaders understand you don't build a great organization. You don't win a great victory with just everybody. You've got to go after the best. The reason that you're in this room today is because you're in the top 20%. 20% of the people are going to do 80% of the work, and they're going to give you 80% of the return, and 80% of the success of the company. It's always that way. And you get to choose who you lose. And you choose who you lose by the standards that you set. There's one more thought about a level 5 leader that I want to make sure that we have. They not only insist upon continued high standards. But thirdly, they had ambition not for themselves, but for their company. Now, let me explain this. Let's go on in the notes. They routinely select superb successors. In other words, they were vitally concerned about passing the leadership baton on to others. Look in your notes with me. Level 5 leaders want to see their companies become even more successful in the next generation. Comfortable with the idea that most people won't even know that the roots of that success trace back to them. Very simply, here's what it is. Level 5 leaders basically say, I want to make sure that I leave somebody behind that can continue to be successful in the mission and the vision that I have. Level 4, if you're not quite a level 5 leader, you know what the kind of leader is right beneath the level 5 leader? This is the kind of person who basically says, I don't care what happens to the organization after I'm gone. I just want to get everything for myself. And they don't have a sense of longevity. They don't have a sense or perspective of the big picture. In your notes, in my book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, one of the laws, in fact, it happens to be the 21st law of the laws of leadership, is the law of legacy. And the law of legacy says a leader's lasting value is measured by succession. Max Dupree, author of Leadership as an Art, declared, succession is one of the key responsibilities of leadership, yet of all the laws of leadership, the law of legacy is the one that the fewest leaders seem to learn. And so in this book, here's what I wrote. Achievement comes to someone when he is able to do great things for himself. Success comes when he empowers followers to do great things with him. Significance comes when he develops leaders to do great things for him. But a legacy is created only when a person puts his organization into the position to do great things without him. That really begins to define legacy. So what is the succession sequence? On the plane coming up here, I was just going through my notes. This is not in your notes. But basically, the succession sequence is as follows. 1, I have personal success. Number 2, I develop a team of workers. Number 3, I develop a team of leaders. Number 4, I mentor the key leader out of the team of leaders. And number 5 is succession. That's the sequence. That's the process of the way that it happens. Okay. Now, for the rest of this lesson, I want to not talk only about level 5 leaders, but I want to talk to you about other factors that will make you a level 5 leader. Okay? So let's look at the other factors that will help you take your organization from good to great. Number 1, people first, strategy second. I thought this was very revealing. We expected the good to great leaders would start with vision and strategy. Instead, they attended to people first, strategy second. They got the right people on the bus, moved the wrong people off, ushered the right people to the right seats, and then they figured out where to drive it. In other words, you know what they basically said? There's no need to drive the bus anywhere until you got the right people on it. You can drive the bus anywhere you want to. If you don't have the right people, whenever you get there, you're not going to be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So they said, people first, strategy second. In your notes, people are an organization's most appreciable assets. So what did these level 5 leaders do? Number 1, they find the right people. That's key. If you're going to be a successful leader, you have to be able to find the right people. In your notes, great leaders have the ability to discover ability. My friend Elmer Townsend and I, many, many years ago, were talking about leadership. And he's the one that shared this thought with me the first time. He said, there's something more important than ability. And I said, what's that, E.T.? He looked at me and said, it's the ability to discover ability. That's what great leaders have the ability to do. They have the ability not only themselves to do things correctly and successfully, they have the ability to discover other people that can do things successfully. I love sports. I used to live in San Diego, and now I live in Atlanta, Georgia. They just had the NFL football draft, and I was just reading that the two teams in all of professional football that over the last 5 years were the worst at drafting players. In other words, the players they drafted just didn't do well when they came to the pros. The two teams that were the worst in drafting players were the San Diego Chargers and the Atlanta Falcons. And I thought, boy, can I pick the cities to live in, huh? A guy that loves football, and I picked the two cities that have the worst teams in picking out the draft. Here's what I want you to see. Not only are they the worst teams in picking the draft, but they also both were in last place. See, you're only as good as the people you recruit. I was having lunch recently with Lou Holtz, and he's just one of my very favorite people. And every time I get a chance, we sit down and grab a lunch. And Lou Holtz told me, he said, John, here's the way this works. He said, a bad coach, if that bad coach has good players, can win. But a good coach with bad players can't win. He said the secret of being a good coach is being able to attract good people around you. That's all we're saying. Level 5 leaders, they find the right people. Number 2, they remove the wrong people. In other words, they not only have the ability to find the right people to bring on the team, they have the courage to remove the wrong people on the team. Now, let me just say this. The reverse is actually realistic. It's very easy to find the wrong people. Isn't that true? I mean, if I went out and said, go find some leaders to recruit, you'd have a very difficult time because leaders aren't in abundance. What I've always said is turkeys flock, not eagles, okay? And so if I said, go out and recruit some leaders, the right people are hard to find, and the right people are hard to keep because they have options in life. It's the wrong people that are easy to find, and it's the wrong people that are hard to get rid of. You know, they just hang around. You know what I mean? You just say, go, the door's open, go. And they just kind of hang around and stay, and it's kind of hit the ball, drag Charlie, hit the ball, drag Charlie, hit the ball, drag Charlie, hit the ball, drag Charlie. After a while, don't you just want to hit Charlie? I mean, that's the way it really works. But these level 5 leaders, they have the ability to bring the right people on the bus, remove the wrong people. Now, let me just say one other thing about removing the wrong people. This is a great illustration. If you set your standards high, the greatest way to get rid of the wrong people is to create an environment that only winners thrive in. In other words, make the environment of such that people that don't belong in the game get uncomfortable with the game. This is a great illustration. Just listen, it's not in your notes. The professor stood before his class of 30 senior molecular biology students. He's about to pass out the final exam to them. He said, I've been privileged to be your instructor of this semester, and I know how hard you have all worked to prepare for this test. I also know that most of you are off to medical school or grad school next fall, and I'm well aware of how much pressure you are under to keep your GPAs up. And because I know that you're capable of understanding this material, I'm prepared to offer an automatic B to anyone who would prefer not to take the final. In other words, the prof looks at him and says, you don't have to take this final. I know you got the material pretty well. I'm prepared to offer a B to anybody that just doesn't want to take the final. The relief was audible as a number of students jumped up to thank the professor, and they departed from the class taking the B. The professor looked at a handful of the students who remained and offered again. Any other takers? This is your last opportunity. One more student decided to go. 7 students remained in the room. The professor closed the door and took attendance. Then he handed out the final exam. And there were 2 sentences typed on the paper. Congratulations, you have just received an A in this class. Keep believing in yourself. Isn't that beautiful? It's a powerful illustration of how many people sell themselves short in life. And that prof, what he did is he created an environment to get rid of the B students. And then he rewarded those who were the A students. Not because they were maybe any smarter than the B students that left, but because they had confidence within themselves. And level 5 leaders have that ability. Let me just say one other thing. They not only find the right people and remove the wrong people, but number 3, they put the right people in the right position. In other words, they take the right people and place them correctly. In my book, The 17 Indisputable Laws of Teamwork, one of the laws is the law of the niche. And the law of the niche says all players have a place where they add the most value. In other words, you are most valuable where you add the most value. That's the law of the niche. Okay. The second characteristic of these level 5 leaders is what we would call facts, F-A-C-T-S, facts and faith. Now, the Harvard Business Review called this the Stockdale paradox. I've just reduced it, calling it facts and faith. Here's what they said. This finding is named after Admiral James Stockdale, winner of the Medal of Honor, who survived 7 years in a Viet Cong POW camp by hanging on to two contradictory beliefs. His life couldn't be worse at the moment, and his life would someday be better than ever. Like Stockdale, this is not in your notes, just listen to it. Like Stockdale, people at the good to great companies in our research confronted the most brutal facts of the current reality, yet simultaneously maintained absolute faith that they would prevail in the end. In other words, they held both disciplines, facts and faith, at the same time, all the time. Margaret and I, just a couple of weeks ago, I was going down to Albany, Georgia to speak on a Sunday. And so we decided to leave a little bit early, and we love history, and we're learning a lot about the Civil War living in the South. And so we decided to visit the Andersonville prison. The Andersonville prison is one of the worst prisons of all for the Civil War. 54,000 soldiers were kept there. 13,000 of them died. The conditions were horrible. They have an incredible museum there, and we spent 2 or 3 hours there just going through the museum and just enjoying learning a lot. And they had a prisoner of war section in the museum where they had the testimonial accounts of these POWs. And one of them giving the account was James Stockdale right here, who had this ability to say to himself, it's never been worse than it is right now, but it will never be better than what it's going to be someday. Now, what I want you to catch here is there's a tension at which I find very few people can hold at the same time. But this is the key, and here's what I want you to catch. It's the challenge of holding the tension of facts in one hand, faith in the other hand, simultaneously. In other words, at the same time you're saying, boy, my company isn't doing exactly what I want it to do. That's the fact. What did Max Dupree say? Max Dupree said the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. So the fact is, it's going pretty tough right now. But at the same time, have incredible faith. It's going to get better. What I find is that when people are on a roll, they're high on faith, low on facts. When people are having a hard time, they're high on facts and low on faith. You've got to hold them both. And think about it as a leader. As a leader, you have the facts of reality of the organization that you're leading. But what do? You always offer faith to keep people climbing. What was it Napoleon said? Leaders are dealers in hope. You have to be a dealer in hope. You got to constantly let them see the faith, the hope, what could be. But I also know people that they're all faith. And they have dreams and it's going to get good. And to be honest with you, it's pie in the sky. And they've never built the foundation of their organization on facts, what really is. And so it's not one or the other. It's not whichever one fits the moment at the time. It's both all the time, holding them in both of your hands, understanding I have to be realistic, and yet at the same time, I have to have faith. Now, quickly, on facts, Max Dupree already gave you the quote, the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. Although I do like Mark Twain's quote. It's not in your notes, just listen to it. Mark Twain said, get the facts first, and then you can distort them as much as you please. And I've known a lot of people who followed the Mark Twain philosophy, haven't you? But remember this. You don't build your organization off of dreams. You build off of reality. After you have reality, dreams can be very effective. But dreams are never effective without reality first. Facts and faith. Great statements on faith. I love the one of William James. The one thing that will guarantee the successful conclusion of a doubtful undertaking is faith in the beginning that you can do it. I love that quote. That's a great quote. Personal story. Last year, once in a while I speak for Peter Lowe seminars, and I don't know if you're acquainted with those, but he'll bring in a bunch of kind of high-powered people, and they'll speak all day to the business community. It was last year, about a day before there was a Peter Lowe seminar going to be in Dayton, Ohio. The office called down, and they said we had one of our speakers that had to cancel at the last moment. John, could you get on a plane, and can you come up to the arena in Dayton, and can you speak? And I happened to have that day open. I said, sure, I'll do it. So I got on the plane, not realizing until I got there that the person I was replacing was Christopher Reeves, Mr. Superman himself, who was going to be in the last slot. He was the last speaker of the day. He was kind of like the top billing drawing card. And the people came to hear Christopher Reeves, obviously not knowing that Christopher Reeves because of his physical ailments. And I really admire him and his faith and all the things that goes with it, but not knowing he wasn't going to speak. And so I usually feel quite confident, but I felt a little inadequate to take Superman's place that day. But Christopher Reeves, in fact, I have a wonderful friend that I didn't even know they were in the Dayton arena there that I grew up with, literally, a longtime friend, Phil Conrad. We grew up together in school. And Phil and his wife Karen happened to be at that seminar, and I didn't know that. I think there were 15,000 people there, so I didn't even get to see him. But he told me the story later. On the way home, Phil was talking to his wife Karen, and he said to her, he said, who would have ever thought that John Maxwell would take Superman's place? And Karen looked at Phil and said, John would have thought that. But to follow Christopher Reeves. Now, here's what he said, and I got the paragraph in here because this is a great faith statement. He said, America has a tradition of achieving the impossible. That's part of our national character. That's what got us from one coast to the other. That's what got us the largest economy in the world. That's what got us on the moon. On the wall of my room when I was in rehabilitation was a picture of a space shuttle autographed by every astronaut now at NASA. On top of the picture it says, we found nothing is impossible. That should be our motto. It's something that we must do together. So many of our dreams at first seem impossible, and then they seem improbable. And then, when we summon the will, they soon become inevitable. If we can conquer outer space, we should be able to conquer inner space. The frontier of the brain, the central nervous system, and all the afflictions of the body that destroy so many lives and rob so much potential. Classic example. Facts. He's in a very physically tough state. But faith, it's going to get better. In your notes, I put the parallel between facts and faith. I want to just kind of draw this part to a close, and I'll go to number 3. Here it is. When you look at facts, it's the foundation we build on. When you look at faith, it's the wings that we fly with. When you think of facts, that should be used for evaluating people. Faith, that should be used for encouraging people. Facts, that's what managers see. Managers look at the facts. Faith, that's what motivators see. They're always lifting up people. Now, here's what I want you to see. That last statement is the key statement. Level 5 leaders do both. Again, and they do it simultaneously. They balance facts with faith, never forsaking one for the other. Number 3. The third area of level 5 leaders as far as going from good to great is what I call build up to breakthrough. They have the ability to build up the organization until the organization experiences a breakthrough. Follow with me in the paragraph. Good to great transformations do not happen overnight or in one big leap. Rather, the process resembles relentlessly pushing a giant, heavy flywheel in one direction. At first, pushing it gets the flywheel to turn once. With consistent effort, it goes 2 turns, then 5, then 10, building increasing momentum until, bang, the wheel hits the breakthrough point, and the momentum really kicks in. Our comparison companies never sustained the kind of breakthrough momentum that the good to great companies did. Instead, they lurched back and forth with radical change programs, reactionary moves, and restructuring. The ability to go from build up to breakthrough. Breakthroughs occur 3 times. When we continually, number 1, meet needs. Meeting needs allows us to stay in the arena. Number 2, improve ourselves and our team. And number 3, succeed. It's an absolute fact that there is no success like success. I love this quote. It's not in your notes. You don't need many major breakthroughs to achieve dramatic results. As Albert Einstein used to insist, he only came up with the theory of relativity once, but it kept him in pipe tobacco for many years. Have that breakthrough, and then all of a sudden, in the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, it's called the law of the big Mo, isn't it? Momentum is a leader's best friend. Isn't it true when you have momentum, you can do no wrong? I mean, you've got momentum, and everything you say, they just are awestruck by, and everybody gets in line, and everybody signs up. Momentum makes your work or your mission easier to accomplish than anything else. I tell pastors when I do leadership conferences with them, I say, momentum is worth 3 staff members. You know, in fact, I tell them if they got rid of 3 staff members, they maybe would get momentum. I don't know. But anyway, momentum is a leader's best friend. And when you have it, things are easy. When you don't have it, in fact, you know what I call momentum or breakthroughs? I call momentum sometime the great exaggerator. Momentum has the ability to take what is and exaggerate it. Now, that's both positively and negatively. When you have no momentum, things look worse than they really are. Isn't that true? Haven't there been times in your company you just want to stand and say, folks, just let me tell you something. It's not as bad as you think. Because you lack momentum. And it's also true, just like when you lack momentum, negatively it becomes a great exaggerator and makes things worse than they seem. When you have momentum, it exaggerates positively and makes things look better than they ever seem to be. Does that make sense? So you've got to have the breakthrough. From build up to breakthrough. From good to great. Good is build up. Great is breakthrough. One more thought on breakthrough, because it's a very important one. Here's what I have found. The breakthrough temptation is this. And it's almost always this. It's this for me. I'll bet it's this for you. When you have that breakthrough, when you have momentum, the temptation is to ease up. The temptation is to celebrate. The temptation is to say, oh my goodness, this is great. Things are going so wonderful. And boy, I'm telling you, the recruitment is going great. Isn't that the temptation to ease up and celebrate? I mean, it is. It is for me. You just kind of want to sit back and say, wow, aren't we good? Huh? Aren't we good? And it just feels good to just know you have achieved it. You know, touchdown. It just feels good. The temptation when you have a breakthrough is to ease up. Now, let me tell you something. That's exactly the opposite of what you should do. When you have the breakthrough, that's when you absolutely spend more time, spend more energy, spend more money, because once you have that ball rolling, the compounding effect is so huge, you don't ever want that ball to stop. You just keep that ball rolling. In fact, if you want to know when you should ease up, it's when things have slowed up. I mean, when you don't have a momentum and when you don't have a breakthrough. In other words, when the train's already stopped, get off and take a rest. You weren't going anywhere anyway. You didn't mess anything up. You were already stopped. Don't sit on the train and wish it would get going. Take a nap. But once the train gets going again, don't get off the train. In fact, when you've got momentum and the breakthrough, stay on the train as long. If you jump off, it's dangerous. You could hurt yourself. You could hurt your organization. Don't do the temptation that most people have when they have a breakthrough. Celebrate and ease up. Don't do it. That's when you push the pedal to number 4. If you want to go from good to great, choose the simple over the complex. Let me explain. The simple over the complex. In your notes. It's called the hedgehog concept. In a famous essay, philosopher and scholar Isaiah Berlin described 2 approaches to thought and life using a simple parable. The fox knows a little about many things, but the hedgehog knows only one big thing very well. The fox is complex. The hedgehog is simple. And the hedgehog wins. Our research shows that breakthroughs require a simple, hedgehog-like understanding of 3 intersecting circles, and here they are. Number one, what a company can be the best in the world at. In other words, find out what your organization can be the best in the world at. Let me even make this personal. Find out what you can be the best at. Whatever that is, keep it simple. Stay to your strengths. What I've often said is, I tell people all the time in leadership, it's okay to work on your weaknesses, but working on your weaknesses doesn't mean much. One of the greatest fallacies in life is people trying to work on your weakness. You know what you're better off to do? Go to a therapist, get secure enough to say, I'm not any good at that. Because the day you say you're not any good at that, you'll quit spending time trying to be good at something you're not any good at. The best way I can explain it is, if it's a weakness that you have, no matter how much energy, time, or money you put in it, you're never going to get real good in this area. I would love to be able to sing. Happens to be a weakness. Now, I can take voice lessons. I can do everything I want to get my voice better. But can I tell you something? After all the money spent on all the voice lessons, I'm still not going to be good as a person with just mediocre gifts in music. I have to face that fact. The hedgehog principle basically is find out what you do well, stay right there, and don't let anybody get you off doing something else. Play to your strengths. If you play to your strengths, it'll take you to the top. If you don't play to your strengths, weaknesses will never take you to the top. Let me give you a classic example of that. Several years ago, as I think back in the process of my own personal journey, I realized that I was a good leader. Now, when I realized I was a good leader, I also realized that there were other good leaders. In fact, I realized that even though I would maybe be a real good leader, there were other real good leaders. And in the room of real good leaders, there were some real good leaders that were better than me. At the same time, I realized I had another strength. Now, I'm only giving you the two strengths I have because that's all I've got. If you wanted all the weaknesses, we could do a 2-day seminar. But the two things I can do well, I can lead well and I can communicate well. And that's it. That's all I can do. I'm very, very limited. But when I realized that I could communicate leadership well, that I could teach people how to lead, I made a determined kind of priority that I would begin to teach and train leaders. Because here's what I knew. If I just led, I would be in a room of really good leaders. If I just communicated, I would be in a room of very good communicators. But if I communicated leadership, the room would have less people in it. And I understood that was my niche. Now, all I want you to do is sit down and ask yourself, what do I really do well? General Electric, in the last 25 years under Jack Welch, has absolutely gone to the top for one reason. They determined that what they were going to do, they either had to be number one or number two in, or they're going to get rid of it and not do everything. And they determined very simply they were going to keep it simple instead of complex. The two key words in striving to become best, letter A, eliminate, letter B, concentrate. Eliminate what you don't do well at, concentrate on what you do well at. That's one of the intersecting circles. What do you or what does your organization do best? The second intersecting circle is how the organization's economics work best. How do the economics of my organization work best? How do we best financially play again to what we do well and what our strengths are? And the third intersecting circle is what best ignites the passions of the people. When you can financially center yourself the best, do what you do best, and gather the passions of your people around those two things, then keep it simple and stay right there. Number 5. If you want to go from good to great, the fifth thing the Harvard Business Review said was strategic technology. The ability to strategically use technology. And here's the paragraph. The good to great companies had a paradoxical relationship with technology. On the one hand, they assiduously avoided jumping on new technology bandwagons, but on the other hand, they were pioneers in application of carefully selected technologies making bold, far-sighted investments in those that directly linked to their hedgehog concept. Like turbochargers, these technology accelerators create an explosion in flywheel momentum. In other words, they were able to take technology and maximize it. Again, in our Enjoy group, under Enjoy, we in the last year and a half have begun to do live satellite simulcast across the country. I was just reading just this week. They give me a list over the last 5 years of how many events I do for Enjoy and how many people hear me do the events. I think 3 or 4 years ago, I had done at this time of the year, in May, I had done, 98 Enjoy events, conferences, etc., and I don't know, a couple 100,000 people. But anyway, I'd done a considerable amount. This year, I think I had done 16. Now, here's what's amazing. There were as many people who heard me this year with 16 events as they heard me 4 years ago with 98 events because of technology, because of the ability of the satellite and the live simulcast. Okay, that's what they're talking about. To go from good to great, you don't have to always do more. You just have to do more strategic technology. Number 6, the last thing, a culture of discipline. The good to great companies had within themselves a culture of discipline. When you look across the good to great transformations, they consistently display 3 forms of discipline. Number 1, disciplined people. H.P. Liddon said, what we do on some great occasions will probably depend on what we already are. And what we are will be the result of previous years of self-discipline. It's wonderful to get on your team, is it not, just a self-disciplined person that just can show up to work and do a few things, just self-discipline. Number 2, disciplined thought. Not only the person being disciplined, but what they call disciplined thought. George Bernard Shaw said, and I've always loved this quote, few people think more than 2 or 3 times a year. And I would say for many people that's an exaggeration. I have made an international reputation for myself by thinking once or twice a week. Disciplined thought. Disciplined thinking means 3 things. First of all, it means thinking. You probably have to think to be disciplined in it. 2, thinking continually. And I find very few people have the discipline to what I call sustained thought. In other words, you know that you need to be thinking on this, and you just stay there thinking on it until you have a breakthrough with that sustained thought. And thirdly, thinking continually about the right things. It's not just thinking. Don't think in a vacuum. Think continually, and think continually about the right things. This coming Saturday, Margaret and I are going to go with 2 couples, the Rylands and the Elmores. Tim and Dan have been with me almost 20 years, and so we're taking them to England for a week, and we're just going to have a good time, enjoying ourselves and doing some stuff. And when it comes to disciplined thought, one of the things I'm working on this week is, what should I take with me for the week we're going to spend with them, and then our kids are going to join us for the second week over there. So I'm going to have a couple weeks over there. What should I take with me mentally that I need to constantly think about? And I'm just forming it. I'm just right now forming it. Now, I won't have a lot. My mind doesn't have the ability to do a lot. But I'm talking about maybe a couple things that I'm going to take with me that during those 2 weeks, I can discuss them with Margaret, get her feedback, but just think on these things. What I'm saying is, most people do not have disciplined, sustained thought. So therefore, they never can get a thought all the way through to completion. A disciplined person, disciplined thought, and number 3, disciplined action. Thinking leads to action. And the quote is not brilliant, but it says it all. The way to get to the top is to get off of your bottom. Albert Hubert remarked, parties who want milk should not seat themselves on a stool in the middle of the field and hope that the cow will back up to them. The door of opportunity won't open unless you push. Boy, isn't that true, huh? As I wrap this time up with you, at the beginning of the lesson I said the difference between good and great is the difference that makes the biggest difference. And that's a fact. We've already discussed it. We've already talked about it. We've already brought that into the process. Let me illustrate it to you from my biblical background. Going from good to great. The Hebrew children, when they were in Egypt under slavery, they were in the land of not enough. They went to the wilderness, into the land of just enough. And they wandered 40 years satisfied with just enough. And finally they went into the promised land, to the land more than enough. I want you to get out of the wilderness. I want you to go from good to great. You don't have to live on just enough. Get over on the other side and live in the land of more than enough. As I wrap up this lesson, I just want to say that one of the people in this room, Lloyd Tomer, who's been a friend of mine and a friend of Equip for quite a few years, has been one of those kind of people. He's a guy that wants to live in the land of more than enough. And one of the things I love about Lloyd is when he got in that land, he didn't live in the land of more than enough for himself, but for people like Equip and organizations like that. And remember, a level 5 leader, one of their desires is to leave behind them something that will last for eternity. I've always said success is when you add value to yourself, and significance is when you add value to others. And you'll never be happy with success, but you'll be fulfilled with significance. So we go from good to great, not just for ourselves. Society needs it. Our culture demands it. The God that created us expects it. Our potential is God's gift to us. What we do with that potential is our gift back to God. So get out of the good land and get in to the promised land. Thank you very much.